Welcome to this presentation of the Paper Street Podcast. Welcome to Late to the Party, a program on the Paper Street Pictures Podcast Network. Your hosts for the following are myself, Shawn Talley. Joining me as he traditionally does, the Jack to my Rose, or maybe the Rose to my Jack, I do not know. One thing I know for sure is that unlike Leo, neither of us is probably fitting on that floating door with Rose. He is a fellow member of the Paper Street Pictures production team. He is Mr. Cameron Burns. How goes it, Cameron?
I have long since decided that if I'm on a boat that is sinking to the bottom of the ocean, I'm gonna bring whatever piece of debris right down to the bottom of the ocean. It's just, you know what? It's my lot in life. Otherwise, I'm doing well.
Good to hear. But yeah, let's get into it. We are talking about a movie that we thought would be one of the white whales, the sacred cows that we couldn't find somebody who had not seen, you know, a Forrest Gump or a Lion King or a Star Wars. We are talking about Titanic with an actor friend of ours named Camille Sullivan. Cameron, when you heard about Titanic, what was your reaction to Camille besides why?
My reaction was, holy crap, I can't believe we found somebody who hasn't seen Titanic. And yeah, like you said, we've long since had a list of about 100 movies that we wanted to hit on this. But on that list, there's probably a list of about 10 where we were like, I don't know that we're ever going to be able to find somebody who hasn't seen this movie. The Jurassic Parks of the world, like just stuff that every person in the world, and especially someone like Camille, who is of the right age to have seen Titanic in the theater. And like at some point we may get people who just are too, like Chris Ball was, who was like too young to have seen The Princess Bride. But like, I was just shocked. I was shocked Camille hadn't seen Titanic. Like, I was just floored. When I reached out to her, I did not expect that movie to come back.
No, sure. This is, yeah, like you said, like a Back to the Future Jurassic Park level type miss, especially with the, you know, a lady of her age range. We're not going to pinpoint her age. That would be rude. But yeah, it is a curious thing, like, you know, the stories about how many women were seeing that movie over and over and week to week, and it kept the thing at the box office multiple weeks in a row. But yeah, we'll talk about Titanic real quick. The premise of this show is we usually touch on for folks who've never listened. We reach out to a potential guest. We ask them, what's the biggest, most popular, most in the zeitgeist movie, like a Titanic, for whatever reason you may have never seen. We will chat with them ahead of their first watch of it and ask them, you know, is there a reason why? And then send them off, watch the movie, and then have them come back and we reconvene and have a discussion about it. Cameron and I almost always will be rewatching in that interim as well, because it's oftentimes we've not revisited a movie in quite a while. And Titanic's one I have not seen start to finish in many, many years.
Same. I haven't seen Titanic in a while either. Obviously, like every other guy our age, I was dragged to see it 4 or 5 times in the theater by my girlfriend at the time. But yeah, I haven't seen it in a hot minute. I really like Titanic, though, and I'm excited to give it another watch.
Yeah, I know they sold it as a love story, but Aaron and I were already film nerds by the mid-90s. You know, we had our awakening like a lot of people did, 93, 94, 95, with all those big movies that we might cover here sooner than later. But by 97, we were just James Cameron fans. So yes, they sold it as a big love story to a female audience, but we were excited. We were there opening weekend for sure. And yeah, I think we may have seen it 2 or 3 times ourselves with other people, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of the perfect combo. It's why everyone in the world saw it when it came out. It's got a little something for everybody. It's like a complete 4-quadrant movie, and 14-year-old boys, 75-year-old women, everyone loved Titanic.
Yeah, it was a big one in almost every way. A huge boat, a huge movie, a huge cultural phenomenon. And again, one that our guest for this installment, Camille Sullivan, has never seen. So let's bring her on and ask her exactly why she missed this one.
Let's do that.
Joining us for this episode, a fantastic actor who has appeared in films like Hunter x Hunter, TV shows including The Man in the High Castle and Shoresy, and who folks can see right now in the film Exile, and we'll see down the road here in the upcoming Paper Street Pictures horror thriller Shelby Oaks. She's the coolest Canuck this side of James Cameron and Celine Dion. She is Camille Sullivan. Camille, thank you so much for joining us here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
And we're glad to get you in on this one. This is a movie that, you know, when Cameron and I were kind of pitching the idea of the show about movie blind spots, this is one of the very first ones we name, like the most ubiquitous movies that people have seen, like Jurassic Park and Lion King and Titanic. And we have
This was a white whale. This was one of the white whales. We weren't sure.
Well, luckily for you, I hate a love story.
That's the spirit.
Oh, so that's where we're getting at, is like, you got to give us the reason you have not seen the 1997 film Titanic.
That is the reason. I'm not big on a love story. It makes me sound terrible and cold, but I haven't seen The Notebook either. I just don't. I don't know. I just don't go in for it. I'm too jaded or something.
That is the cold-hearted evil Camille Sullivan I know. That checks out. So yeah, I mean, I could see that. This is one of those movies that wears its love story very much on its sleeve. So it's kind of the selling point. So if you're not kind of into schmaltzy romance, I could see trying to avoid it. No one else seemed to be able to do it but you. But
Yeah, but then too, when people talk about it so much, then it's like I want to see it less. You know what I mean? I also haven't seen Avatar for the same reason.
Oh my gosh, you're gonna be right back on like 2 episodes from now talking about Avatar.
Contrarian is what Camille is. It sounds like a little.
What she is a James Cameron hater, and that shall not stand.
Oh no, I'm not. I don't hate James Cameron in particular. I just don't like it when everyone talks about a movie and you hear so much, then it's so hyped up. I'm like, well, I don't want to watch it now because then like my expectations will be high and I'll be disappointed. And then time goes by and then it's like, oh, I'm just never gonna get to that thing.
So the craziest thing to me is that you're probably, and I don't know the answer to this, but you're probably right around the same age as Shawn and I. And like, you couldn't avoid this movie if you tried. How did you, like, I understand that you were like not super jazzed to see it, but I think I probably speak for Shawn when I say we weren't that jazzed to see it either, but we got dragged to see it like 3 different times by 3 different people. How did you manage to avoid getting just like sucked into the vacuum that was Titanic at that point?
I think, it's been like I've clicked by it on TV a few times and I've sort of sat on it for 5 minutes or whatever. And I'm like, oh, they're on a boat and it's period and everyone's in love or whatever. And I don't know. Something about it. This is terrible, but something about it repels me a little bit. Like I'm a little afraid to watch it.
Oh, man. Shawn, this could be exciting. We could get our first episode where someone really just freaking hates the movie.
We're also learning that Camille hates boats and period settings.
and James Cameron.
We got to remember that when we try to cast her next time.
Do
not include water. Or the past.
No love, no water, no James Cameron. Camille she's a hater.
No.
I understand. We've talked about this before. When you don't see something right away, it does become harder to see it. And again, hype does kill. Hype can really put a damper on a movie. So I would hope now with 30 years distance that you're going to go in with a tempered expectation enough, especially if you've seen bits on TV and you're like, this is not for me. But I will say, without giving it away, it is 2 different movies in a way. It is that love story for 90 minutes, and then it is a like stressful disaster movie for 90 minutes. So I think Cameron was trying to pull people in with the emotion of the first part to sell the second part, which is really his bread and butter, big action set pieces and stuff. And, he went all out and built an insane scale stuff, which we can talk about on the backside. But if it doesn't vibe with you, you might be rooting for the iceberg. Who knows the way you're talking, but we'll see.
Probably not. But, I mean, I do love Kate Winslet, so I'm excited for that because I think she's great. And the truth is I'm a crier, as you well know, so I'll probably sob through a lot of the movie and then be like, oh, that was lovely. And maybe that's why I don't like love stories because it's just like, oh, I don't need to tear my heart out, not unless somebody's paying me to do it.
There's probably a good hour's worth of crying in this movie, so
yeah, when you see me next time, I'll be puffy and
don't worry, I'm making Puffy cool again, so I think you're going to be okay. But yeah, no, I could definitely see. It's funny. Titanic is one of those movies where I can definitely understand why people would not have wanted to watch it. But it's also one of those movies that sucked those people in anyways, just because anybody in its orbit kind of just had to see it out of like blind curiosity. So it's kind of crazy. I do think it's a movie that a lot of people were dragged into.
Yeah.
But also I think most of those people came out the other end going, oh, well, it was a James Cameron movie. So this actually was good, even though I came to it with concern. So I have faith that you're going to like it, even though I kind of hope you don't, just because I think it would make for an interesting episode if you didn't. But
I think I'll probably like it. The other thing that turned me off is then, people talk about it and I kept hearing at the end, like, well, why doesn't he there's room for him on the wood or whatever they're on.
Oh, man.
You know what I mean? Man. So I heard that over and over. So I already had like a doubt in the end for me.
Yeah, there are some current, to this day, memes that exist about that. I will say once you see it, it's not as obvious as you think. And also, double the weight might sink the little wardrobe door or whatever the heck that was she was sitting on. Someone Cameron's in my size, as I joke in the intro, could not sit on this thing. So like maybe Leo could have fit. But yeah, there are some things she'll know just from pop culture osmosis, I think.
Oh, there's going to be a ton.
That sequence, yeah.
With that, how much of this movie do you feel like you know? It is a movie that through osmosis, I think a lot of people know a little bit about. How cold do you think you're actually coming? I know you probably understand there's an iceberg involved. But
yes, I've heard about the iceberg.
Okay.
I feel like I know a lot of it. Like I know he's like lower class and she's upper class. And that's kind of interesting to me, actually, the dynamics between the two classes and how the upper class sort of was given priority for their lives and stuff like that. That I find pretty interesting. So I know about that. I know there's a love story. I know sort of the ending. And I know that I'm pretty sure I've watched The Young and the Restless for many, many years. And I'm pretty sure that the actor who plays Victor Newman, Eric Braeden, is in it. And I'm actually pretty thrilled about that.
Wait,
yeah,
Shawn,
and without giving too much away, I did know that, yeah. Long story. My mom watched that for many years too. The fun thing, and it's not really spoiling, is that basically Rose's family is fictional and Jack is fictional, but everyone they meet on that boat, almost to a T, including all these random quartermasters, are based on real people, from the photos, from documentation, from manifests and stuff like that. So he's playing somebody, I can't remember off the top of my head, but he's like a famous aristocrat in the movie too. There's a scene where Molly Brown, I don't know if you ever saw Unsinkable Molly Brown as a youngster, Camille, with Debbie Reynolds, but she's in there, played by Kathy Bates, and she actually does like an introduction to some of the high society, and every single person's a real person. I do believe he plays one of the famous Rockefellers or something like that who were on the boat.
Oh, well, that's cool. That's interesting. I didn't know that a lot of the characters were based on real people. I sort of assumed they were all fictionalized, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah. See, we're selling her slowly, Cameron.
That's right. We've got her. You just gotta tell her all the soap opera stars in it, and then
that's right.
And then
whatever gets her in.
Do you watch General Hospital? My girlfriend watches General Hospital.
No, only The Young and the Restless. Once in a while, The Bold and the Beautiful, but generally The Young and the Restless. When I was a kid, I met a couple of the actors at a mall. My mom took me to a signing. It was very exciting.
Oh man, so you're like an everydayer.
Yeah, I've been watching since I was 14.
So hold on, let's dig into this, since this has to do with Titanic, probably. How do you so when you're on a shoot, with Shelby Oaks, you worked on Shelby Oaks with us. When you're on a shoot, how do you go about getting your Young and the Restless fix?
When I have time, I just watch it on demand, and you don't have to catch every day. If you get a couple days a week, you can pick up enough to follow. But yeah, that's what because it's relaxing, and it's like I've known the characters for whatever 20 odd years, so or longer. Geez, and so. They're like family. Like Eric Braeden's been on it ever since I've been watching. I feel like I know him, so it's really like I don't know. It's a good way for me to unwind.
Is he still alive? I'm sorry. I thought he passed.
No, he's still alive.
Oh, I might be thinking of like Jennifer Aniston's dad or something from one of the other shows. I thought he was one of the older soap opera actors that had passed away in the time since 97, but that's crazy. Okay.
Wait, Jennifer Aniston's dad's on soap operas?
Yeah, she's a Nepo baby. You didn't know that?
I figured.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
I just watched
John Aniston was, I think, Days of Our Lives, maybe. Camille can speak to this. She's the super fan who goes to malls.
No, I only know The Young and the Restless. In fact, I met one of the actors at in a professional setting. And it's so embarrassing. So the publicist who was with me, I was like, oh, I'm a fan. So she took me over to meet him and get my picture taken. And he goes, oh, I'm on this show. It's called The Young and the Restless. Have you seen it? And I go, no. I don't know why I lied, but I was embarrassed and I lied. And so he's explaining it to me. I'm like, oh, that's great. And then I saw him again a couple days later and I felt so bad. I had to confess. I'm like, actually, I know the show. I know who you are. I watch it like every day.
I am learning so much about Camille today. This is exciting.
I kind of want to make this a Young and the Restless with Camille episode, but I guess we got to get back to Titanic.
Yeah, we've long since waved bye-bye to Titanic. We haven't talked about Titanic in 15 minutes.
Well, she'll have more to say about the actor from that show when she sees him in the movie. That'll be one of her notes on the post watch.
I'm gonna have to figure out which guy it is.
You might recognize the face. He's been on TV for many years, but yeah, he kind of fits the mold when you see him in Titanic too. He fits that era with the mustache.
I can see how he would, and I like all the actors in the movie in Titanic. Actually, I think they're all it's a stellar cast, and I do like James Cameron, so I'm sure it will be excellent. It'll be excellent. It'll be well executed. It'll be great. It's just something about the softness of the story. I don't know. Something about that's just a real mental block for me.
No, understood. I think Cameron and I both have not seen it in a number of years ourselves, so we'll be doing the rewatch in this interim moment as well. Okay. I'm interested to see what holds up because the effects were so cutting edge in 97. I'm sure a few might show little seams nowadays, but I'm kind of curious if the love story will work on me again, too. I know that the Titanic stuff, so much stuff Cameron was doing in real life and searching it, well-researched, all that stuff, I think, is still great. And like you said, he executes a movie well. He makes a movie experience for people. Even if it doesn't 100% hit, he takes big swings and he gives people something memorable. So I do hope, you come back with a mostly positive response to it, especially with the 30 years distance from it.
Do you feel like it's different now that the whole thing happened with the submersible recently and people died there? Will that make it different for you guys?
You mean in the movie? Will those guys show up at the end?
No, I just mean Does that change the way you watch it at all or anything?
I mean, a lot of people died there before that.
Yeah, but that was like a
I
long
don't know.
time
Like,
ago.
look, I don't want to go too far. I don't want to annoy people or make them mad. But if you get in a submarine that looks like it was taped together and you try to go to the Titanic, you deserve what happens to you.
Oh, jeez.
So, Shawn, you can take that out if that's too hardcore.
I don't want to.
But
I don't want to be a dick, but here's a really dickish statement.
I don't want to be an asshole, but if you like pay to get in a submarine that looks like it was taped together with like silly putty, you deserve what happens to you. I'm sorry. I do
nobody deserves if it's true that it was like, microsecond explosion. Nobody deserves that just from a bad decision.
We'll probably take that out. That might have been too hardcore of a take. But
I'm sorry I brought it up.
I do kind of stand by that. Like rich people are just looking to get killed, and I don't feel bad for them when they try to go to space or the bottom of the ocean and like dollar store rafts. Like, I'm sorry, we have real problems in the world. Shawn, you can cut all this stuff out.
Either way, no, I'll edit to make you not sound so horrible and dismissive.
I appreciate that.
No,
it doesn't change how I watch it, Camille, if that answers your question.
It does. I feel like my question's been fully answered.
Yeah. Sorry, you hit a button there.
No, there's an anecdote we'll tell on the other side too about Cameron himself going down there in the years after Titanic. It truly changed the trajectory of his entire career, as you guys have seen with the Avatar movies and him going underwater with the Avatar sequels. Now he has been obsessed with underwater kind of since this movie, since he was hatching the idea for this movie when going down to the shipwreck. So. Again, we'll talk about Cameron and more on the other side, but let's watch this movie. It's a big ask. I know, 3-hour running time. So we appreciate Camille, taking the dive, no pun intended, in a submersible. God, Cameron.
We taped together submersible.
I'd like to formally apologize to the people in the submersible. I feel bad that it happened to you, but like you shouldn't have gotten in the submersible. I'm sorry, you just shouldn't have.
That's a half apology.
Yeah. I apologize. It's the best they're getting. Shawn, you got a real editing job ahead of you on this one.
No, all good. We'll return in just a moment to the listeners' ears here to get Camille's thoughts and our rewatch thoughts on this film and much more. So stay tuned. Hey there, welcome back. What was mere seconds for you, the listener, was a good deal longer for us. When we last left off, our guest, Camille Sullivan, had not seen Titanic. She was late to the party, in part because she admitted she hates love, she hates romance, she hates schmaltz. And as we have learned in the interim, she may have also missed it because she was too busy keeping up with the goings-on of the Newman and Abbott families in Genoa City. But at least she has made it to the party. We welcome her back, a more cultured individual, a more learned film viewer, a little less young, possibly a little more restless, but someone who has now seen the 1997 film Titanic. Camille, you feeling any or all of those things?
Yeah, I am very impressed with all your Young and the Restless references. That just tickles me.
I took a picture halfway through the movie of the guy that I thought was your Young and the Restless guy and sent it to Shawn to make sure that I was right, and it was him. So I correctly found him like a Where's Waldo picture.
Yes.
Perfect.
Playing the richest man on the ship, the real-life Mr. Astor. But we'll get to him in a minute. First, we want to say, what was your kind of overall reaction to this movie, again, with 25 years plus distance and having, seen a bit here and there? Did it work for you? Did you come away with a different thought of it? Was anything different than you thought it would be, like the mixed timelines of modern day and period? What were kind of your macro thoughts on it, Camille?
Yeah, I liked it. And I did have kind of a wrong impression on it. It wasn't nearly as heavily based in romance or as schmaltzy as I thought it was going to be. I liked that it started in present, and then that was a nice way in to get into the story and the period. And it really did have like an action adventure kind of mystery element to it that made it exciting and made it cool. And it was such a huge production with so much detail and so many moving parts and so well executed. It was pretty impressive.
Shawn, how would you go about location managing that location? The Titanic.
Well, considering that James Cameron, the maniac he was, had already broken the most expensive movie budget 3 times in his career, I think, at that point, with True Lies and other movies. This, just a few years after Waterworld, was the next one that like the media was dismissing and calling it was going to be a bomb. He built a full scale model of the boat in the Mexican Ocean down in Baja somewhere. And the only thing he shorted on was like some of the boats were maybe 9/10 scale and some of the funnel, steam engine bits were 9/10 scale. But the man built a full-length ship with a axis under it to tilt it. So I would have thrown myself into the water, to the short answer.
Well, I mean, that's you every time you location manage, so that doesn't surprise me. But
it wasn't water last time.
It is fun. Not too soon. It is funny how like all of everyone thought this movie was going to be a bomb, including the studio that made it. And it's funny how that's just gone from history now, that it hit and is this great movie. And now everyone forgets that like it was considered this runaway production that was never going to work. And that's just been whitewashed from history.
I mean, it actually was a runaway in a bit. The budget did balloon. The Fox execs freaked out. They actually called for cutting an hour of the movie at one point. And Cameron, this is kind of a famous story now. It's been mythologized, but he goes, you know what? Take my share of the profits. I'll forfeit them. Just give me a back end point, because they were so sure it was not going to be the movie it was. And he ended up doing okay when all was said and done.
So it's I do find it a little funny. So Camille, you did mention that you liked the wraparound story with the Rose coming back to the Titanic. When I watched it this time around, and it had been a long time since I've seen the movie, I kind of feel like that's just window dressing that isn't really necessary. Am I wrong on this, Shawn? Like, it just feels like, I mean, I get it, and it has a couple moments, and it allows her to throw the thing back in the water at the end, which is obviously a big moment. But like, I don't know. I feel like the movie would have worked just fine without.
Well, let's let Camille answer that first before I.
Well, what I liked about it is that it gave me a little bit of a way into getting into the history of it, because I like some period pieces, but I don't gravitate toward them. So it gave me like the mystery for me of the Titanic, as I know it, is of the ruins. So that's what was sort of interesting to me. So if we start with the ruins and the footage of the ruins, and, you gotta love, who's it? It's Bill Paxton. Do I have that right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Mm-hmm. He's great. So it's like it was a nice little window into the story for me without starting right off in the period. So I liked it. It modernized it for me. And, it served some effective story points, like with the computerization of showing how the boat sank exactly. And then you see, and then it makes sense when it plays out later and you see it go straight up and down and then into the water. I thought all of that was pretty useful information for coming up later.
Sure.
I tend to agree with Camille. To answer your question, yes. Seeing all the stuff in the beginning, and also we had mentioned early on, like the submersible in real life here recently, but seeing all that stuff, I think seeing the ruins and seeing the ruins at the end again helps sell the actual tragedy of it. Yes, the movie completely would work as just a period piece, but the framing of the modern stuff and the modern love story, her going back to it and all that, I do think helps sell all of it, from the love story to the actual tragedy of what it was.
Fine, I'm wrong. Move on.
I do think there's a hilarious bit at the end, though, where Bill Paxton has a cigar and he's smoking it and then he just chucks it in the water.
Yeah, I love that Bill Paxton is clearly playing like what James Cameron believes himself to be. Where like Bill Paxton is like playing James Cameron, but by way of like a 90s rock band lead singer with the hair and the earrings and stuff. It's like James Cameron fan fiction. And it was a little weird. But yeah, Paxton was having a great time. Like, he's the only person in this movie that didn't realize it's a tragedy. He's just having a blast.
Yeah.
Like, to the point where he gets called out a couple of times by people. It's like, yo, man, people died down there. Like, come on, man. And he's like, oh, yeah, sorry. It's just a boat to me. And I'm just like, all right, easy, man. But it's not that stuff didn't work. I just felt like, with the three, like if I'm the studio, I'm going, all right, maybe we just get rid of this stuff. Come on. Like, I don't know that it was necessary, but it worked. I mean, it helped. And I love Bill Paxton. So I'll take
the heart of the ocean, though, as a MacGuffin. I mean, that also is part of what Camille said, the mystery. So you are knowing there's something you're looking for and something that plays and bringing it back into the movie. So yeah, I mean, overall, I can see, yes, the studio head saying like, can't this be a period movie? But with all the stuff and the research Cameron did on the Titanic, him doing all the real life modern stuff, I think it's what makes this movie what it is.
Yeah. And I mean, it totally works for me. I was surprised how well it worked for me. I breezed through it when I watched it again and liked it every bit as much. There's a little bit of here and there. There's some kind of cheese in the first half, but it's mostly drowned out by a lot of really good stuff. But then, when it hits, when the iceberg hits the boat, it really kicks into high gear. And it's like a theme park ride, man. It's just watching these people try to survive is tragic.
Yeah, that looked like a grueling shoot, I gotta say, for the actors. Oh my God.
Oh man, yeah, they're just like wet the entire time. Like DiCaprio's like 130 pounds in this movie. How was he not sick the entire time? Like,
I think they said a lot of people were catching the flu and everything on this shoot because it went 150 some days, I think, when all said and done. And
oh my God.
yeah, I agree, though. That 90-minute love story is followed by a 90-minute disaster movie. But man, once that iceberg hits, the tension does start to ratchet as it keeps going, becoming a exceedingly stressful movie.
Yeah, and I kind of love the way it builds slowly. It's like it hit the iceberg and then nothing, there's no immediate like, oh my God. It's sort of like it bleeds until the guy's like, we're going to be underwater in an hour. And then it's the reality of it sits in and then it builds and builds and builds. I thought that was pretty cool.
it feels very much like what would really happen in a scenario like this, where no one knows what to do and everyone's just kind of in shock and doesn't believe it's going to happen. Like, I've always thought that if any boat sank and had to go to lifeboats, that it would just be a complete clusterfuck. Like, no one knows how to get the lifeboats down. And that's what you see here. And I'm like, that feels real. Like, these people don't plan for the boat to sink, especially the Titanic. So like, yeah, I mean, and I love that people just keep saying, well, this boat can't sink. And the guy who made it is like, I promise you, it's going to the water. So we can.
Well, Camille made a point about she knows there's a class issue in the movie before she watched it. But to that very point, the class at top has no clue that the bottom's already drowning and like people are losing their lives already at the very bottom. And they're just like, no, it's fine. It's fine. Except the designer and the other folks at the top who are quietly freaking out. But, yeah.
Oh, possibly my favorite line in the whole movie is when the blatantly racist Italian guy who's friends with Jack and his buddy on the boat finally make it out of like them not letting the people in the lower class up to the top. They finally get to the top and they run by the band playing. And the guy's like, oh, music to drown to. We're definitely in first class now. Like, what a great line that was. Oh, it's so good. It felt, everything about the boat going down felt very real. The way people reacted to it, the differences in the way people reacted to it, the way the rich people just couldn't fathom that they couldn't buy their way out of this problem. Like, I don't know. Everything about the second half of the movie just really, really sings for me.
Yeah, it's great. When Rose's mother says something like, the lifeboat's like, well, I hope it's not going to be too crowded.
Oh, my God. That woman is cold. Just cold-hearted, especially when we're jumping around a little bit, but the fact that only one boat went back to get extra people that were in the water is insane to me.
Yeah.
And that Rose got on that boat, like that. Yeah. I mean, that's some of the good nuggets you do get from the fact that she's narrating the story and you're bouncing to and from, is you're able to get little nuggets like that. So, but yeah, the fact that 1,500 people went into the water and like a couple hundred came out. It's just like only 7 were saved from the actual being in the water and not in the lifeboat is crazy that they had all those half full boats and no one went back.
I mentioned the last time how I'd seen all the things about why doesn't he just get on the piece of wood, the door with her? But I understand it. It's because then water would have been on it and then they both would have been partially submerged, even if they didn't drown, and they would have froze to death.
Well, he tried. He tried once and it didn't work, like at a water park when you tried to get 2 people on a raft and he just gave up, died. From that, he was just like, you know what? Rose is more important. Like, yeah, I get it. It's a fun thing to joke about, but like, yeah, it made sense.
It made sense because everybody else had frozen to death. So if she was like even still waist in the water, she would have died.
Yeah, she would have died the same way Jack died, almost certain.
Yeah,
so,
no, there is a lot of real tragedy around it. The stuff about only the one boat went back was real. The fact that the first several boats that went down were even at capacity, and the fact that those ones not at capacity did not go back for all the people floating. It's insane. But like you said, people were, self-preservation in different ways, I guess, in the moment. But
this movie's a real bummer.
It's a pretty good analogy for the state of the world, though, really, with the rich people on the top not even realizing that the people on the bottom are already drowning.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of a perfect analogy, and it's only become more apropos with time. Like, it felt very of the moment, even though it's a movie from 1912, well, 1997 by way of 1912. I mean, that's like an evergreen, thing of the rich not realizing the bottom are drowning and
not wanting to know, not inquiring how anyone else is either.
Yeah, it's the class stuff I think really, really works in this. And still, I mean, it worked in 97 and I think it works even better now.
Yeah.
I think that's James Cameron's just a really good writer and really good filmmaker and that stuff. Like he really nails because we spend more time with the rich people than the poor people, and he really kind of nails those guys and how they think and how they act, and like to the point where like Billy Zane is like a mustache twirling supervillain in this movie. Like everything that guy does is to be an asshole.
Yeah.
Like every moment, even when the boat's going down, he's like, I'm not going to get in the boat. I'm just going to go be an asshole. Like
it's more important to me to be an asshole.
It is. It was more important for that guy to be an asshole. And then he, of course, still gets off the boat, which is the real tragedy of the whole movie. But
that's it too, right? He knows he's so sure that he'll be saved because he's always been saved, because he's always been privileged. So he's like, I can take the time to go get my last digs in and still find my way off.
And he keeps saying that he makes his own luck, which is so asinine. It's like people that start on third base and pretend they hit a home run. It's like, you didn't make your own luck. You were born into your own luck. Like, that character, for as much as he is kind of a one-note scumbag, is a really fun character within the movie, the way he kind of plays the foil to Rose and Jack. It just works in the movie, even though I think in a lesser movie, he would have just come off as like a one-note, just like too bad to be believed bad guy. Yeah. Also, Billy Zane's just a really good actor, so it's just fun to see him.
He's an interesting guy, obviously. My wife, when she caught an hour of this with me when I was watching it, and kept pointing out his thinner than usual eyebrows, because he normally has like the Peter Gallagher caterpillars up there. And I guess they were a little finely lined in this movie, and it was distracting her terribly. But let's talk about the cast, actually, starting with him. He's one of those who first offer was to Matthew McConaughey, funny enough, who had not yet hit like an A-list level necessarily in 95-6 when they were filming this.
I got to be honest, I think that would have been Bad News Bears. I do not think that would have worked. But McConaughey has become a great actor. In that time period, McConaughey was not a great actor. And I also just think he does 1996, Matthew McConaughey was not giving off high society vibes to me. Like I'm not sure I'm buying that he was from Pennsylvania in like if that had happened. So I think we dodged a bullet there.
No, that's fair. He may have been a Southern tycoon, or they might have changed it if he couldn't have pulled the accent off, or they'd have just barreled through like Keanu and Dracula. We don't know. But I'm with you. I think Billy Zane does pull off like the New England aristocrat thing a bit more believably. But Kathy Bates, another one, already an Oscar winner at this point. Molly Brown's been lionized in other films. That role was first offered to Reba McEntire per the Wikipedia, which is interesting.
Another bullet dodged, even though Reba McEntire would have probably been fine. But Kathy Bates just kills that role. She's so good.
Yeah, Kathy Bates is so good. I can't imagine anybody else doing it.
Yeah, she's probably my favorite supporting performance in the movie. I know Gloria Stewart was the one that got nominated for all the things partially because she was like 97 years old. But like, I think Kathy Bates is the best supporting role in this movie.
This is one of those rare movies like where the two characters playing the same person both got nominated, because Winslet and her both, I believe, were nominated. And Gloria Stewart was alive when the Titanic sunk. She was a golden age. I think they said, find me a golden age actress. And she was acting in silent films when she was young. She was in the original Invisible Man. Yeah, it was cool to see her kind of be dusted off for this movie.
Wow. Yeah, she was very good. I mean, she really commanded the screen when she was on it. I never got bored of watching her.
And then as we get to the larger roles, Winslet and DiCaprio they've been lifelong friends since this movie. And Winslet really took off after this. They're both Academy Award winners at this point in their lives, but in 97, they were still up and coming. Leo Cameron had liked for a long time. He wanted River Phoenix when he was first hatching this idea a few years prior, but he obviously passed away tragically. But every actor you've ever heard of was in contention for this movie. Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, Jeremy Sisto had just admitted he screen tested for it even. Skeet Ulrich and a dozen more we've heard of. But Cameron really was like sold on he's got to look 20 years old, guys. He's got to be believably young. And Leo famously had that baby face for a long while. So
someone needs to do like a deep fake version of this movie with like Jeremy Sisto and Reba McEntire and Matthew McConaughey and Madonna, who was one of the people that was in talks for the role that Kate Winslet obviously got of Rose.
Madonna was in talks for the role that
She wasn't in talks. She was one of the names that came up. I don't know how far that got, but she was
must have been a little too old for it, I think.
Yeah.
At the time.
Yeah, probably. If I did the math right, based on what she says in the beginning of the movie, Rose is supposed to be 16.
Oh. I think 17 and Jack's 20 is the deal. I think that's the official line.
Yeah, because she said she was, I'm trying to remember, she said she lived 85 years or something after, and she was 101.
Right.
So, the math is that she was 17, which, if I'm being honest, it didn't look 17. But then, in the 80s, 20-year-olds looked 50. So what do I know? Like, I'm sure that's probably what 17-year-olds looked like back then. But DiCaprio looks like a child. Like he looks.
Yeah,
like
he looks
13.
really young. And the youth is important for both those roles, I think. Like if they were older, if they read as like fully mature adults, I'm not sure that the love story would play.
No, I agree with that because what they're doing is kind of shitty. Like, Billy Zane's an asshole and her mom sucks. And so you get why she's doing it. But like what Leonardo DiCaprio is doing is basically like thumbing his nose at some guy and being like, I'm going to hook up with your fiance and there's nothing you can do about it. And like, yeah, if you're like 40 and you're doing that, it's like, maybe it's time to look in the mirror. Like, I do agree that their like youthful exuberance is what makes that work. And it could have been a real mess if that hadn't been there. I totally agree with that. Also, this movie has Victor Garber.
Victor Garber. He was good in it.
This is the only thing I ever remember him being in without white hair. And it was weird. There's just a lot of really good older white guys in this.
Yeah.
They just went like, bring me all the really good British white guys because we're going to need them. Like Ewan Gruffudd, Jonathan Hyde, David Warner, the guy from Young and the Restless, whose name I don't know.
Eric Braeden.
Eric Braeden, of course, you knew that. You went and saw him at the skating rink when you were 16.
I didn't see him. I saw the actors who plays Nicky. He wasn't there, unfortunately.
He was good, though. That guy was good. And I did recognize, when I saw him, I did recognize him as the guy from the soap. So I was pretty proud of myself. But yeah, like the cast, I mean, really, for as much as this is a movie about Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio, like the cast from top down is just amazing. There's not a single role, with the possible exception of the super one-note racist Italian sidekick, that isn't like this really interesting, good, fleshed out role. Like even the guys in the band and the captain and like all those people are just doing such great work. It doesn't matter who you're looking at on screen, it's always riveting. And that's a tribute to, I guess, whoever cast a movie and James Cameron for always kind of being like that in James Cameron movies.
It's funny you mentioned Leo as the main character he wrote being a little much like, well, you don't really love that guy, and I see the spirit in you. James Cameron, famously, without casting too much aspersions, has done that his whole career because he famously left I think it was his first wife for Linda Hamilton when he worked on Terminator. Then he left Linda Hamilton for the gal in this who plays Rose's daughter in the modern stuff, Susie Amos, which, crazy enough, he is still married to this day. I think it's the longest relationship he's ever had.
Well, that's because you can't date cartoons, and he's done nothing but Avatar since. So
fair point.
He's actually been dating the Zoe Saldana character in Avatar for 2.5 years. We just don't know about it.
He has his own brain scan thing he puts on his head and goes into the
world. They live
not to spoil Camille. She hasn't seen the Avatar movie, she said.
They live in Narnia or wherever. What is the place they live in? And then
Narnia. Yes, let's go with Narnia. I'm not going to correct you.
It's not Narnia. I will think of it. I know Pandora, unobtainium. Unobtainium is the stuff they're trying to get.
Yes. Some on the nose names. Yes. Pandora is the name of the place.
Pandora. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. He was a bit of he was known for falling in love with his leading ladies. And I remember Susie Amos was supposed to be a kind of a next big thing who never really panned out. Even before that movie, like she was like a mid 90s kind of next big thing that kind of after Titanic, maybe because she spent all her time hanging with, a director who wasn't directing anything.
But stuck in a volume or whatever he's filming the Avatar movies in.
Yeah, like she's stuck in a submarine for 3 years. But she never really went anywhere, which is a shame because she was a good actress, or is a good actress, I guess.
I want to ask Camille about one thing, is it has not come up in the pre-watch and it has not come up yet. What do you know and what do you remember about the most omnipresent song of the late 90s, the Celine Dion track, My Heart Will Go On?
I remember hearing it so much at the time, so much, and it is throughout the movie, just like throughout, and it works. It works in it, and Celine Dion. I can't say anything bad about Celine Dion. She seems like a lovely woman, and Canada fucking loves her. So ape
shall not kill ape. The Canadians shall not slight another Canadian.
That's right.
So what I want to know is, we queued this up in the beginning that you're a crier. How much crying happened in these 3.5 hours?
Weirdly, I did not cry. And that is pretty unusual for me. So I think it was because the parts of the movie that I really liked, really identified with, were the more adventure parts. more disaster parts. And the love story I liked, but I don't know that I really got, and I might be too old for it now. Like maybe if I'd seen it in the 90s, I would have been all in on the love story and really got swept up in it. But I don't know. I didn't like, I liked it and I liked how it served the film. And I thought it was all really well put together, but I didn't get swept away in it like, oh no, the great loves. Like that didn't really happen.
So funny story. About a decade ago, my girlfriend and I were on vacation at the beach, and it was quite late, and we were drinking / had been drinking most of the night. And she went to like lay down in bed, and I was still doing whatever. I don't remember, out in the living room or whatever. And I start to hear like some noise coming from the bedroom. And I'm like, what the hell? And I go into the bedroom, and my girlfriend is openly weeping. And I'm looking around. I'm like, what the hell's going on? The TV is on a commercial. And I'm like, what is happening? And she can't even put words together. Now, keep in mind, she's pretty drunk at this point, too. She can't put words together. She's crying so hard. And then the TV comes back from commercial, and Jack and Rose are floating on the board door table thing that they're floating on in the water. And my girlfriend just goes, I would let you on the door with me. And then just starts crying like a crazy person. So you're not as bad as she was, if it makes you feel any better. Yeah, somehow in her drunken state, she made the mistake of watching the last like half hour of Titanic, and it did not end well.
Oh my God. Well, I was not drunk, so that might have been part of the problem.
Well, that was part of your mistake.
Yeah.
But yeah,
no, it didn't get me that way. I'm not sure why, but
it only got me once on rewatch. Shawn, did it get you at all?
Well, wait, tell me which part and I'll tell you.
The woman holding the baby in the water.
Oh, I mean, anytime you see like
the woman holding the baby in the water when they're going back through looking for survivors,
and
that woman's
a haunting
shot.
Her
baby like that got me a little bit. Other than that, I held strong.
That did. I will say, and this could be because since the late 90s, we've been exposed to so much Titanic stuff, and I've seen the exhibit a couple of times and all that kind of thing. But truly, the first 10 minutes of the movie where they're down in there and seeing the ruins, I wasn't like emotional, but it was more affecting than I think it ever was to me, just knowing all the things we know about that tragedy now. So just seeing like the weird drone go through the ruins actually was more emotional than some of the other stuff. But
I think just in general, it's a better movie as you're a little older. Like, I mean, I was 17. It came out in 97. I graduated high school in 98. So I was like a junior in high school when this came out. And my girlfriend dragged me to see it 2 or 3 times. And at the time, and different girlfriend than the one that cried. But I feel like the themes of this movie and some of the stuff in this movie and some of the nostalgia of the movie, like it just lands better on a 40-year-old than it does on a 17-year-old. I mean, I thought the movie was good when I saw it when I was 17, but like, yeah, I think this is a movie for adults, and it hit me better at 43 now than it ever hit me before. So I think it helps, maybe not for the crying over the love story aspect, but I think just the class struggle and the history and like really just how scary that would be. Like, obviously, Shawn, you're a parent, like having to hand your kid to somebody on a lifeboat, that's terrifying. Like all of that stuff, I think hits so much harder now, the survival stuff, that I think I like the movie now more than I ever did. And in fact, I bumped it up half a point on Letterboxd.
Oh, you did the thing where you go back and you reassess. That's interesting you say that. Yeah, some of my kids, I used to make fun of some of my friends who would get real freaked out at babies in peril in movies. And once I had them, it did switch for me, and I even called one to apologize for clowning him when that kid almost got ran over by a semi and looper. I was like, you're stupid. That's dumb. And then I went and saw Arrival, and I wept openly in front of other people. I was like, all right, this is different now. So, yeah.
Well, as someone without a baby, I'm going to clown you right now.
Well, to your point, though, I think at 17 or whatever we were when we saw it, mortality is so far away. And when you're in your 40s, all the survival stuff might hit harder because you can possibly see an end, or you've gone through deaths and families and friends and stuff like that. So, yeah, all the survival stuff.
At 17, I would have been sure. At 17, I would have been sure I would have survived the Titanic. At 43, I'm now 100% sure I would have died on that boat.
Yeah, the folly of men. Camille knows enough men to know this. Men are dumb. Men are like, oh, I could beat Serena Williams at tennis. Oh, I could take on a gorilla or a bear. No, you can't. But men really think they are invincible when they're younger.
Yeah,
you think I could beat Serena Williams at tennis?
I thought you were going to say a bear.
Maybe
I was going to call you a bear at that point.
No, Camille, tell us about dumb men. Tell us how men are dumb.
I tell you about how men explain things to me that I know very well over and over, like they're an expert on it.
Did Shawn just do that? Are you saying Shawn just did that?
No, I'm not.
I was about to do that as a bit, though. If she
Shawn bear-explained you.
With like thinking you can survive anything or do anything is also thinking that you know everything.
Yeah.
I don't
As I
think
get
women
older,
don't grow up with that same confidence. I've often fucking been so envious of unearned male confidence.
oh yeah, I've made the joke before just because knowing people that I know that have great confidence and other people I know that don't, that like I wish the prettiest woman in the world had the confidence of the ugliest man in the world.
Yeah.
Like it is
point, yeah.
insane how confidence works and how men seem to, because the world is a fucked up place, mostly run by men, that men are just born. I mean, it's the character in the movie. It's Billy Zane in this movie. It's just complete unearned confidence
Well, it's not
that
just
everything's just going to be great.
Yeah, the Bruce Ismay character that Jonathan Hyde plays, who he's the pointy guy with the big mustache that's talking with Victor Garber a few times. He was the one that said famously, unsinkable, you know, the bravado of it all. That's what kind of made it such a strange irony.
He's the guy that built it, right?
No, he was the one that, so Victor Garber was the designer. And there's been real life stuff in the time since that explained why, like they used smaller rivets and stuff like that because they were so sure of themselves that helped, you know, the sides rip apart when they kind of skirted the iceberg. But no, the Bruce Ismay character, who was based on a real guy too, he was the Starliner promoter. He was the one that was in charge of making this ship such a grand, you know, destination thing for folks, which obviously never happened. But
yeah, well,
yeah, you go now to those exhibits and stuff, and they show you like, hey, if they'd have just bumped that thing head on, it would have been like you boop a car. They would have bounced off it. The fact that they steered to the side and it started ripping the bottom across is what really did them in. They didn't know any better. I mean, in the moment, you try to veer out of the way. But yeah, there's so many wrong decisions that led to such a quick tragedy.
That's what's sad. That's one of the things that's sad about the movie is like it was just a series of regrettable things that could have easily been skirted if people had just not had hubris and been paying attention. Like they see that when the guys in the catbird seat up there finally see the iceberg, it's like right in their lap. It's like somebody get these guys binoculars or something. Like just the systems were not in place, man. Like it was just not good. That like they're like, oh, there's a giant iceberg right in front of us and we can't turn around it. Like it was just like
moonless night, completely calm water. It was like the perfect storm, no pun intended, which is a similar kind of a storyline. But yeah, because of that, nothing was breaking on the bottoms of the iceberg, so they couldn't see it. So it's wild to think that to be that dark at night, to not even be able to see something like that bright white sticking up out of the water.
Yeah. And it's also scary to think of a world where like you can be in the middle of an ocean and something like nothing can get to you for 4 hours. Like we obviously don't live in that world anymore, but like how horrifying is that like there's just nothing out there. Like you can't fly a plane out here. You can't fly a helicopter. You can't take like nothing in 1912 could get to you for 4 hours in the middle of the ocean. That's just like terrifying. To me, that's probably the scariest thing of the whole thing is just being in the middle of the ocean, just floating, not having any idea if anyone's ever going to come save you.
Yeah, I think they do a pretty good job of illustrating that in the movie because it's like you're all swept up in all the grandeur of the parties and the blah, blah, blah until they hit. So it feels like, you know, you're in a metropolis almost. And then, yeah, once it hits and you get sort of a glimpse of that dark night outside and all of that, and then you get the sense that, wow, we're really in the middle of nothing and there is no one coming to save you. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's like, it's just terrifying. It goes to like how the world gets smaller and smaller with technology. And like now those same people probably could have been gotten to in an hour or half an hour or whatever. Like, but back then it was just like, well, there's a steamboat somewhere near you. And it just,
the captain and Garber kind of say that outright, that when the distress calls finally answered, 4 hours, like this thing will be underwater in an hour. So yeah, that is something that maybe the last time a event like that could have happened before technology maybe made it so much easier for so many of those things to go right in the future.
Well, it's also why the ocean is just incredibly scary.
We don't belong in it.
It's big, it's deep, and we don't belong in it, but we just keep going into it. It's the ocean is not for people. And every time we've learned that over and over again, as somebody who's right now, I can see the beach from my window. The ocean is not for people. It's for looking at.
A thing that has happened too, not just survival kicking in our brains with movies as we get older, but I truly get more fearful of the ocean as I get older because I think I realize how dangerous the place is. You hear stories where people are like 15 feet out and get caught in a rip current and float away and you never see them again. Like it is something. Yeah, I truly do wonder sometimes, we do not belong in there at all, I don't think.
It is weird. I love scenes in movies where people just walk into the ocean to die. That's like my favorite thing. But this is so dark. But if I was going to kill myself, that's the way I do it. I just walk into the ocean to die.
I got to think that there's some problems with that plan. In that I just like you do see that all the time in like people that just walk into the lake to die and like, but like, how do you do that? Like,
you have to get very drunk first.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like, because I don't think it's possible to drown yourself on purpose.
Well, you just have to you'd have to get out there so far that you can't make your way back. Because then you would have second thoughts. You'd be like, oh my God, what am I doing? But then it's got to be too late.
Yeah, it's a real shitty way to die. Like,
it's not a great way, but it's cinematic and kind of beautiful.
It is cinematic. It is.
So much about Camille in this episode.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, drowning does not seem like a fun way to go. And I will say, yeah, a little bit of affecting bits there, like you said, the baby at the end, but just them getting the hypothermia so quickly and going that way is not fun. To see them getting sucked underwater, that usually is a bit of one of those type of deaths in movies that does get you a little verklempt or slightly claustrophobic when you see people going under.
Also, I thought it was so scary and shocking when everybody when the boat was like perpendicular and everyone was just like vertical anyway, and people were just like falling off the side and dropping into the water. All that was pretty affecting, I thought.
It seemed like, and I know gravity was doing it on a lot of people, it seemed like in general there was a flawed plan by a lot of people on the Titanic to just jump into the water. Like a lot of people just jumping into the water. That's not a good plan. You should be on that boat as long as possible. Jack, for all his flaws in women stealing, he had a good plan. He had been on the lower decks where he got in the water and knew how cold it was. I think the argument might be they had no idea just how freezing that water was because he had already been in it waist deep a couple times. So he knew, like, let's not get in there. We will freeze to death. The upper class folks who didn't know any better might have just started hopping in, not thinking about it.
Yeah, I could see that because you don't want to go down and get like crushed in the rubble or sucked under too much with the ship. So you figure, well, I'm going to end up in the water anyway. I'll jump in the water where it's safe. Yeah, not realizing that you're going to freeze to death.
See, the flaw in that plan was your where it's safe part after in the water. Like I'd argue it's more safe on the ship, even with all that's going on, than in the water. But
I think that the musicians had it right. You just play and play and play until you're.
That scene really hit me too. That scene always hits me with the musicians who play on through it because it was true and it actually happened. And like I just always liked that scene, that whole concept.
Yeah, I like that.
Did you know, Camille, hard right turn here, but did you know that the movie Titanic cost more than the ship Titanic?
I did not know that.
Yeah, it cost more to make than the actual ship, which is probably why the good people at Warner Brothers, was it Warner Brothers, Shawn? I just watched
it was a Paramount. It was actually a Paramount and Fox co-production. One handled international, one handled domestic in the aftermath.
The good people
it was
at
such a big thing.
But Warner Brothers were a little concerned because, the ship was the most expensive thing that ever happened up to that point, and then James Cameron made a movie more expensive than the ship. So I would think that's like a funny little anecdote.
Yeah.
That,
a lot of ink was spilled about Waterworld's budget at the time in 94-5. And then again, same fears with Titanic in 97 when it was on its way out. It was the first one to ever crack 200 million as a production budget, which has been surpassed 70 something times since then on all these big movies we see nowadays. But at the time, 200 million was a crazy, crazy number.
It's funny.
Nice, kind of a dumb question.
Sure.
So throughout the movie, they keep saying it's like, they don't say like, oh, we're going to take a ride on the Titanic. They go, we're going to ride Titanic. And there's no the. So is it just Titanic? Like, is that the name of it?
HMS
or is it
Titanic? It's not the Titanic.
So I've been saying the Titanic, and I feel like
I think people still say that shorthand wise, but the official name of the ship is not. The Sphere in Las Vegas is just called Sphere, but people are still calling it the Sphere.
Yeah,
a lot of people want to go crazy with the names. The Smashing Pumpkins, they both work.
You can put the in front of anything and it's acceptable.
Yeah.
We'll allow it. Camille, did you have a favorite line? There's obviously a bunch of memorable lines in this movie.
I thought
the one that stuck out to you?
Another Bill Paxton moment I quite liked at the end. Wait, I think I even wrote it down. He said something like, I've been searching for Titanic my whole life, but I never let it in. That's how I feel. You know what I mean? Finally watched it. I finally let it in.
That's right. It's true. This was very apropos. And then he threw his cigar in the water.
And he just chucks a cigar in the water.
There's nothing better than a guy who spends his entire life working in the water, willing to just throw a piece of trash in the water. Like
right over the archaeological site.
Yeah. Right. Someone like 200 years from now is going to find a cigar in the Titanic. And they're going to be like, I didn't know they had this brand of cigar back then.
Yeah. I will not speak ill of the dead. I think by the end of his career, the late Bill Paxton was a very good actor. He had some very solid roles, but when he was not playing a weasel for James Cameron, I don't think he was great in the early. This was like the Twister era where he was just kind of, his line readings felt like they needed a second or third take. But I didn't love him in this movie. But it is true that he's like the surrogate of what James Cameron either thought he was, but what he actually became, which was the guy going down in the water for the next X amount of years of his life. Because, yeah, he pioneered so much tech all through his career with like the T-1000 and Terminator and stuff like that with Avatar now. And this was no different. Some cutting edge effects. A few of them are showing seams nowadays just because that's what happens with digital effects. But there's still some really great digital shots of this movie that do hold up well, where they blend it with the reality and you can't tell right away that the full scale model goes to a 1/8 model and then suddenly goes to a digital shot, especially when it's dark and they're sinking.
Yeah, I thought the VFX held up really well. I mean, there's always a little bit, but it's a movie that's over 20 years old and didn't feel it. I mean, it's the best you can hope for, right? Like that people don't look back at it and just go, "Ugh, this is like awful." So I think the VFX stand up pretty well. I mean, I think the whole movie stands up pretty well. Like there's nothing that ages the movie. Like it doesn't feel like I outside of like actors kind of knowing their age at the time, like it's a movie that could have easily come out 5 years ago if you just didn't know who Leonardo DiCaprio was. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't feel aged.
Yeah, I agree. It worked for me. The effects worked for me. I felt sucked in. I was never taken out of it like, oh, that looks cheesy or anything like that.
Right.
Yeah, no, it all worked for me.
It also has an incredible score, which we probably shouldn't get through this whole thing without talking about James Horner's score because it is really, really good. Maybe his best ever, although I'm sure Shawn will fight me on that.
Yeah, the score. I mean, James Horner is Aaron's and my favorite composer personally of all time. He's arguably maybe the most listened to artist I've ever listened to because I listen to a lot of film scores and stuff. This was crazily like the fourth highest selling soundtrack of all time with 40 million units sold. And the only reason that's notable is because unlike The Bodyguard, Saturday Night Fever, and Dirty Dancing, which are the only three above it, this only has that Celine Dion song. It truly is a score otherwise, which again, testament to how popular that song was. But this was one of those movies where same with like Last Mohicans, where somebody went who doesn't really know anything about film scores, got into the movie music. And a lot of people bought the soundtrack because they truly did like it. Because, yeah, that to Camille's point, that motif runs through the whole movie. And then James Horner famously wrote the song without Cameron's approval. Cameron did not want a song in the movie. Then he pitched it to him and tried to hard sell him on it. And eventually, I think Cameron, with all the production woes and the budget, he agreed because he thought maybe he could appease studio execs by pushing a hit song also with the movie. And boy, did they. They had a mega hit. Like I said, that song was omnipresent for a solid year.
Yeah. Now, Camille,
yeah,
there are two types of film people in this world. Those who listen to movie soundtracks and those who don't. Which are you?
I do listen to movie soundtracks.
Do you? I do not.
Yeah. Really?
It's not that I don't love movie soundtracks, and it's not like I don't have favorites and movies that I think have amazing soundtracks. I just don't. I'm not the guy who bought the Jurassic Park CD and played. I just never listened to music from movies other than in the movie, I guess. But
I mean, it depends what. I think Pedro Almodovar has fabulous music in his movies. So I will buy those soundtracks. I don't buy them all, but something like that I really like, or Paris, Texas has a great soundtrack.
Yeah. I'm more likely to buy something that has like songs in a soundtrack, like Royal Tenenbaums or The Graduate, something like that. Forrest Gump soundtrack. Like I'm more likely to buy those soundtracks than I am just score. I don't. There's no point in my life really where I just like sit down and listen to the score from a movie, which I know is weird. A lot of film people do, but
I mean, to write to, I need instrumental stuff to write to more often than not. And that's partly why I think I listened to stuff back in the day that way. Because lyrical stuff will distract you. It'll get you singing to it or something else, but you can usually put on. And again, film scores are modern classical music. I mean, they are the equivalent of what that is nowadays. Just big compositions like that. But yeah, this one, Horner had a great 90s run. And then this one just like put him into the next level. And he had a fallout with Cameron years back. He did the Alien score and they got together for this one. And then he was his go-to composer until his death, untimely plane crash death. He worked on the first Avatar movie as well with him, which is another pretty good score.
Indeed. No, he was one of the greats. Like he definitely is. A lot of really great soundtracks.
Cam, you asked about memorable lines and stuff. I would say the two most enduring lines from this movie, and Camille's probably just heard them through cultural osmosis, is "Draw me like one of your French girls," which was a big moment. Like that. And then "I'm the king of the world" became its own little meme before even meme was a thing, where, Cameron even yelled that at his acceptance speech at the Oscars. But those two lines for sure kind of endured longer than any others, it feels like.
Yeah, those will be the ones that in 200 years, when the AFI does their list of memorable movie lines, those will still be on there. Like those are going nowhere. Like they're in the lexicon. There's a bunch of other ones that are like dance around the lexicon. Like Titanic was called the ship of dreams, and it was stuff like that. But like I'm the king of the world and drowning like one of your French girls are like people say those to this day.
All right.
Those aren't going anywhere.
Another question for Camille as we wind down the conversation here. What was your read on the ending? Did she fall asleep? Did she just have a dream? Did she pass away? What did you take from that ending?
I don't know. I was honestly a little bit confused about it. And I thought about going back and watching it again because I don't know. I'm confused why. I really don't know. I kind of thought she passed away. That's my feeling.
There were arguments among cast, crew, and all the people who watched the movie at the time, and most of the cast said, yeah, they thought for sure that's what that meant. Cameron has always been cagey about it and said, like, no, it's for you to interpret. But I mean, the way he shoots it and the way she falls to sleep to have the perfect kind of moment dream with Jack, and then it fades to black, does certainly feels like a...
Well, it's not just Jack, right? It's also a bunch of other people who died on that boat.
Yeah, and it's everybody like accepting him, accepting them.
Yeah, like a
to me,
over into the afterlife and re-meeting with those souls. That's what I kind of got.
Yeah, and that's always been my take on it, is that she had nothing left to live for, and she did the last thing she needed to do, and now she passes away, and she's gonna be with Jack again, and it's a happy ending. Like that's always been my take on it. So, Shawn, what about you?
Yeah, no, I've always maintained it. I remember arguing with people at the time about it. I'm like, she totally died. People didn't believe me. Like, all right, I think she did. But yeah, overall, I mean, we're glad that you had a mostly positive reaction to it. Are you glad you knocked it off the list here?
I am. Yeah, I'm glad I saw it. I've got a bunch more like classic movies that I guess I have to watch, but I'm glad I saw this one. I enjoyed it. I was super impressed with like just the size of the undertaking and how well it was executed. Like that's pretty remarkable.
That someone had to wrangle those background actors gives me hives. Like I just like whoever's wrangling background on this movie deserves an Oscar because there's a billion people in every shot.
Yeah, once you've done certain positions on crews, that you watch movies in a very different way. And Cameron, as someone who's done ADing and stuff, has been like, I could see you just being like, how?
No idea. No idea how they were able to do this.
A thing we always ask folks, Camille, and you kind of led to it, is what is maybe your other huge Titanic, if you will, blind spot? What's a major either genre you're kind of a little dark on, or just is there another big classic movie, like something that everybody has seen?
Let me think. I know there are lots, actually. Like I said, Avatar, I haven't seen. I'm a little bit, you guys are super knowledgeable about movies. I honestly am not. Like I've watched a lot, but I bet there's a ton on the list of like classic movies I should have seen that I haven't.
Well, the thing that makes this show exciting is that like even Shawn and I have giant blind spot. It's just a numbers game. Like we've only talked to one or two people that don't have a blind spot movie big enough for this show. Like most people, no matter how much of a film buff they are, have something that they haven't seen or that they've put off. So like that's what's fun about it, is like it's just a numbers game. So like it's just about getting those people and saying like, all right, it's time to just right this wrong and finally take the plunge and do it. And
I haven't seen hardly any Westerns. That would be a huge blind spot for me. I've never been able to really get into Westerns, so I've only ever watched like maybe a couple.
Okay, we can once you get through the Avatar sequels. We'll
how many are
there? Yeah, right. Well, there's only two.
There's only two Avatar movies right now, but there's
he's going to make it until the day he dies, unfortunately. That water really messed him up, man.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, what happened down there? What happened down there, James?
Listen, I'm happy. Look, I'll see every Avatar movie, but I wish he'd go back to like, I love True Lies. I love the Terminator movies. I do kind of wish
I love the
veer
Terminator
back into a little like harder sci-fi stuff or just big action stuff.
Yes. Please, James Cameron, I know you listen to this podcast, so start making serious sci-fi again. That's what the people want. We don't want more Avatar. Avatar's great. I love it. I watched it, but it's enough. It's enough. So before we let you go here, Camille, you got anything you want to promote? Anything you want to tell the people about what they should go watch?
Sure. Well, Shelby Oaks coming out early next year is my hope. Exile on VOD right now. Shoresy on Hulu and Crave Canada. I got a couple other things coming out, but I'm not sure any dates or anything yet. So I think that I'll pass on promoting them right now.
Save that for the episode we do about Avatar.
How long is Avatar? I'm not going to commit to it if it's over.
James
basically
Cameron only
Titanic.
makes movies over 3 hours and 5 minutes.
Basically
I think
Titanic.
it's somewhere around there. No, I think Avatar might be like 240.
I was like really set up before I started this movie.
So you actually did a single sitting? I was going to ask you that too. You did watch it in one
did,
sitting?
yeah.
Oh,
I
we're
took
proud
a
of you.
bathroom break, but that's it.
Yeah, I did the single sitting too.
No, sure. I think it's more effective when you do that. As much as this movie does have like 2 parts, it was the old like famous 2 VHSs too, with the double case
Oh yeah,
back in the
I
day.
remember that.
The 3-hour movies all did. But yeah, you really could turn this off the second that thing boops the ice and then have movie 2 start tomorrow. But yeah, I think the effectiveness of the love story and everybody around dying works better when you do it in a lump. So yeah, we're glad you took the time, Camille. Thank you so much for watching this movie. We're glad we could knock it off your list as well. And we're glad to revisit it ourselves and talk about it.
Oh, thank you so much. It was fun.
Thank you, Camille.
Take care. Till Avatar. All right. Our thanks again to Camille Sullivan. We appreciate her taking the 3 hours plus to watch this movie and then another hour to rap about it with us.
Indeed, Camille is the best. I love her. So it was fun to be able to get her on the pod and chat about a movie she hadn't seen. And it was fun to rewatch Titanic. I actually enjoyed it more than I thought I would. So it's why one of the things I love about this podcast is it allows you and I to go back and rewatch stuff that maybe we haven't seen for a while. So this was definitely one of those for me.
Yeah, we've done a few where it's been years, and this was certainly one. I mean, I caught a moment or two on cable over the years, but it's been a solid 15 or so probably since I've sat and watched it, maybe 20.
I think of everything we've done on the podcast so far, this is the one that I had probably gone the longest without seeing. It's funny. I still remembered almost everything about it, but I probably hadn't seen it in a good 20 years. So this was the first one that really had been a long time since I had seen it.
The rewatchability plays into the 3-hour runtime too. I think it's a meal of a movie. It takes a little bit of commitment, maybe. Although I guess with rewatches, you could piece it up in the 2 bits like we talked about. But let's do a little by the numbers rundown because we didn't get into some specifics on the show. But this was a box office titan, if you will. So 9th all-time domestic, 4th all-time worldwide in box office. It is actually the 5th highest grossing film of all time when you adjust for inflation. Behind only movies you've never heard of like Gone with the Wind, Star Wars, Sound of Music, and E.T. in estimated number of tickets sold. So only 4 movies have ever surpassed it in estimated tickets sold. Some box office records it broke. Again, we mentioned first ever hit the $2 billion mark on box office. First ever have a $200 million budget, which again has been surpassed a lot since. Most consecutive weeks at number 1 at 15. Second behind only E.T. for the most period, which E.T. had 16. Tied the Academy Award records at nominations at 14. Tied the record at wins for 11. Got picture, got director, got best visual effects, got editing, and score and song, as we mentioned with James Horner.
No acting Oscars.
Nope. Yeah, both ladies were nominated, but did not win. I believe 97, that was the year that As Good as It Gets took the 2 main statues, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I know Kim Basinger for LA Confidential was supporting. Right? So, yeah. And yeah, it's surprising.
It'd be some years till Leo started getting his nominations and eventual win.
Indeed.
We mentioned the song. It topped charts in 25 countries. Worldwide sales estimated at 18 million copies of the single, one of the biggest selling singles of all time. Best-selling single of 1998. Yeah, still a Cameron fan. Do wish selfishly he would veer back out of the water and the blue people, but again, I'll still be there for him because he does make movies. He makes experiences, for all his flaws and faults. I think he's good at just making a movie film, making invisible edits. He's very good at action. He's very good at a lot of stuff. So I remain a fan. I do enjoy his filmography.
He might be the only big name filmmaker who hasn't made a single dud.
That's a good point. I don't think he's got an outright F movie like you talk about. Before we run, this is something we talked about off air with Camille, but if you guys want to look it up, we never got to this on the show, but James Cameron was going down in the water several years after Titanic. He was not done, picking through wreckage and learning more about it. He famously came up above water, and there's a YouTube video you can find. Just write in James Cameron 9/11, and you will see him coming up very excited that they had a cool discovery down there. And Bill Paxton, of all people, is the one that has to break the news to him that September 11th attacks had happened in New York, and it puts a big old bummer vibe on everybody. So that's worth looking up if you're interested. But other than that, yeah, we were glad to cover this one. This was a fun one. And again, big ask for everybody. You don't need to revisit it necessarily if you know it well, but we appreciate you listening if you made it this far.
Yeah, appreciate everybody listening. Go ahead and if you dug it, go ahead and throw us a like. Go ahead and throw us a comment and everything on the podcast. It helps. So thank you so much.
But no, we do appreciate you listening. This has been a presentation of the Paper Street Podcast and Paper Street Pictures. Thank you so much for tuning in, as always. For Cameron Burns, I'm Shawn Talley. Don't be late to the party.
Hasta luego.
And now I can finally, I've seen it. I feel good about it. That one is.
There you go. This is like the moment where you throw the heart back into the sea. This is your moment.
I would have sold that heart as soon as I got on land.
Right? That's what's crazy too. I meant to bring that up while we were recording. I was like, you mean to tell me that this lady just sat on this thing?
Yeah, no, that gets pawned. As soon as I started in life, what are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, come on, that thing was worth like $1 billion.
Not the brightest bulb, but nice lady.